connecting Jaylen Brown to a team. Not just the Celtics are taking calls for, as I've said before, I would trade Jaylen in the right deal. I'd trade anybody. I would trade him for Cooper Flagg, not that that's happening anymore, now that the draft is passed. I'd trade him for Giannis. I'd probably trade him for Booker. I think that's kind of my list, my working list of deals I would do. Otherwise, I'd rather have Jaylen here with Jason Tatum. The hell are you getting from the Kings? Like, what? The Kings were not on my list.
Well, that would be picks. That would be
a haul of picks.
Yeah, that's what.
You're not getting even like Sabonis.
But I think that the thought behind that would be you would have these picks that would become so valuable because the Kings will be bad, and especially them being out west with so many loaded teams out there, they're not going to be in a good spot. So you get all these picks, and either you flip those picks and go out and get somebody else to replace Jaylen, or you hold on to those picks and you go through a real rebuild through the draft. So
if you're telling me it's Sabonis and a buttload of picks, interesting. Not as good as Jaylen, but okay, I would kind of somewhat see that. If you're telling, I don't even want picks just for Derrick White. If you're telling me all I'm getting for Jaylen is a bunch of picks and saving the new owner a bunch of money, I don't lie. I want Jaylen here when Tatum comes back. If it's the end of next year or more likely the year after that, I want him in place for when Tatum comes back. And I'd rather have Jaylen playing with him than Sabonis even. Other players, Giannis and Booker to me would be different. But I think it's going to be hard to find a player I'd rather pair with Tatum. So no, I don't want draft pick. I don't want a bunch of draft picks for that. I don't even want it for Derrick White.
I think it just goes back continually to looking at what you have with Jason and Jaylen, and that it is what most teams are striving to get when they get picks like that, when they load up like that, trying to rebuild through the draft. And they're so early still in their careers together that to just blow it up around this injury and not being sure about the future and a change of hands and ownership, I just think it's way too early. Like, it's still too early to look at that. I know he's on this massive contract, Jaylen Brown, that is. That contract is going to age okay once these other contracts these super maxes start being given out. And I think it's still too early to look at unless it's something that is such a crazy deal. And I'm not sure, especially when you have the new CBA and all these teams who are really trying to get under different aprons and luxury taxes, that there's going to be a team out there who's willing to take on Jaylen and give that much in return.
Yeah, I don't even love the idea. We'll get to Anthony Simons and whether he's staying, going, is he on the team, is he off the team? Like, I want him here. I liked that as a return for Holiday. I was actually surprised at how good of a return they got for Holiday. I acknowledge you probably got a half step worse on the floor without Drew Holiday. But I also don't know that Holiday's a great fit on a team without Tatum. He's a better fit on a championship contender, which is why I thought Portland was an odd trade partner. Maybe he'll still get flipped somewhere else. The deal's not finalized, similar to Simons. But I could at least understand why the Celtics would say, all right, we're going to flip him to carve out space to balance our roster and get a big. I at least get that. I don't get Jaylen and Derrick White. I don't get it. And especially if you're saving money on top of it, you're already below the second apron. You're already out of the area where you were worried about being. If you need to re-sign bigs, you don't need to trade Jaylen or Derrick White to get that done. There are other ways to do it, whether that's Simons, Hauser, Niang, some combination thereof. There's a lot of different ways to do that without involving Jaylen Brown and Derrick White. And if you're asking me to wager on it, I think those guys are going to be on the team. But Zach Lowe connecting them to Sacramento, and on top of that, the Celtics getting their ducks in a row and just finding out what the value is for these players, that's probably a good process. That's probably worth doing to understand, where these guys fit in the hierarchy of the league. But I'm not itching to trade those guys, and I just hope that's not coming from the owner and saying, I don't like this Jaylen Brown deal, get it off the team. We're not going to be competitive anyway this year.
I think with the Kings thing, I wouldn't be surprised if that goes back to the Drew Holiday talks, that the Kings already had that phone line open, talking about trying to figure out who's open from the Celtics to being moved and Drew Holiday. And ultimately, it seems like Anthony Simons, contract-wise, was a better fit for the Celtics because he's on an expiring deal. He's a one-year guy. It's 27.7. If they want to now turn and flip him, like it sounds like they might, to cut down on the cash even more, that's a very easy trade piece compared to somebody like Drew Holiday, who is in his mid-30s now and has so many years on his contract. So, from a business perspective and from a basketball perspective, it was a nice fit to go for Anthony Simons. I think that they're going to flip him again because I do think the priority is that they're going to want to re-sign these bigs. And if you're looking at Luke Cornett and Al Horford, my only question would be this. Like with Derrick White and Jaylen Brown, these are guys that are 30 and 28 years old, and they're very much in their prime. They know Jason Tatum well. They have the chemistry. It makes sense for them to be here 2 years from now. Does it make sense for Al Horford to be here 2 years from now?
No.
So
I don't think it makes sense for Al Horford from his perspective to be here.
I don't understand. To me, the Al Horford thing, it almost feels like a little Brad Marchand-y of like, where is the benefit here? I understand that the front office and the team loves Al Horford and the fans love Al Horford. And I get the sentimentality there, but does it make sense when you're looking at who's going to be around for the next couple years from a perspective of a big to sit around and wait and try to shed other contracts so that you can re-sign Al Horford? He's almost 40.
Right.
He hasn't played back-to-backs in 2+ seasons at this point. And I'm not saying, like, he's still great. Don't count out Al Horford. I'm not saying this from a personal perspective. When you're in the position that the Celtics are and you're making tough decisions, is Al Horford the one that you are moving other pieces around to try to bring back? Like, if you're looking at the timeline around Tatum, that's just a little bit of a disconnect to me.
Yeah, and I don't think it makes sense for Horford to want to come back. Like, he's not going to be competitive this year, and he should be trying to, and he has done this before, by the way. He left Atlanta to come here. People didn't think he was going to leave Atlanta way back when. He went to the highest bidder. People didn't think he'd leave Boston the first time. He went to the highest bidder. So, refresh my memory. Did he sign a one-year deal after they won, or did he take a little less maybe coming off the title a year ago, or was that prior to that?
I believe so. I can fact check
so
right now.
I that's my recollection, but I may not have the details on that exactly right. So I guess he hasn't taken the most every single year, but it's a little different after you win to try to get a second title.
Yeah, when you're trying to run it back and everybody's coming back, that's an extremely different position than you're sitting in now.
Correct. So I don't know how in play Horford is. He's going to have a quote unquote robust market, and when he's had a robust market in the past, he's gone to the highest bidder. Let's go to Brian in Connecticut on Derrick White. Go ahead, Brian.
How you doing?
Good.
I just wanted to talk about this rumors here on Derrick White's trade that I don't think would be done, but they're talking multiple first-round picks. But I went back to look at what the Celtics traded to get Derrick White, and they traded Josh Richardson, who's no longer in the league. He was waived in February. Romeo Langford hasn't played in a couple of years in the NBA. And a rookie that ended up being a first-round pick that ended up being Blake Wesley, who played 58 games and averaged 3.7 points a game.
So what's the point? Great trade?
What a great trade. It's not a Red Auerbach-like trade. Red had a few better than that, but still a great trade.
Yeah, so that was a great trade. Tremendous trade. I hated it in real time. Like, I didn't get why they had to give up. I think they gave up a first-rounder, which turned into nothing.
You were sad for Romeo Langford.
And the pick swap. No, I didn't think Derrick White was that good. And I'm like, I really genuinely didn't think there was a big difference between White and Richardson. I was wrong. Richardson, as he said, basically out of the league. And Derrick White is, on Team USA. And he's won a championship, and now he's on a heist of a contract. So, look, Brad may have more of these moves up his sleeve. I hated the Porzingis trade. That to me felt like they were prioritizing the cap too much, or the apron rather.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the original Porzingis trade when they sent your god Marcus Smart out of town.
No. That was great. Although I'm fearful Marcus Smart could be coming back. By the way, we'll get to that coming up. But this sending Porzingis out of town, I was done with Porzingis. But I thought they could get a better player if they were willing to take back more salary. I think they prioritized shaving that money off too much. So that's not a deal I love from Brad Stevens. But largely, and this includes the Holiday trade, Brad Stevens has done a good job with these transactions, and Derrick White would probably be the crown jewel.
Yeah, with the Porzingis trade, I guess I was a little surprised that they made it as early as they did, because I wondered if there was going to be this situation where they would have Porzingis on the roster during the season and have him play out, show some health, and then get up to the trade deadline, have him on this expiring deal where then they could flip him to a team that's a contender. And every team needs bigs at the trade deadline. So you could make him look good, and you could...
There are two risks in that. One
he gets even more injured?
Well, one is he gets hurt, but I actually don't think that's a huge risk. I think he's still an expiring deal, you only got Niang. It's not like you got a ton back.
Right.
You got Niang back.
No.
So you could get something like that at the trade deadline. I don't think that's a huge risk, but maybe that's a consideration. The other one is you run it back with Porzingis, and now you're kind of good.
You can't be that good.
No, right.
What are you going to do?
You can't. If you run it back with Holiday and Porzingis, which they could have, they don't have to be.
All of a sudden, Tatum's trying to come back in January.
Right.
You're like, Tatum, no.
And right, Bill Chisholm's like, wait a minute, what? We're the number 2
Chisholm's
seed in the
a
East.
Super fan. He's going crazy on the sidelines.
So that's a real consideration, I think. If you want to get rid of this money at the trade deadline, and you're like, well, we could go into next year, but we just have to dip below by the trade deadline.
The fan base turns against you.
Well, yeah, and now you're trading Porzingis and Holiday at the trade deadline.
You're killing the unicorn.
Fans would be pissed.
Death of a unicorn.
So I think that's a real consideration in this. So I didn't like that return. But
I think
largely,
they probably just needed to shed the salary.
Yeah, largely.
They're like, we got to get out from under
You
this.
mean, but that's not. You mean salary. That's not a tax. The tax is not going to be due for a long period of time. You mean salary.
Yeah, I think like the actual cash. They're like, let's just break this down.
That's even scarier. That's even scarier. The new owner wants to start saving. The idea was second apron and luxury tax. Now he's saving salary.
Do you think it would be the same situation, though, if Jason Tatum was healthy?
Well,
I don't think it would be as aggressive if Jason Tatum was healthy, and I think that's okay to say. Like, sometimes I hear other people say they're using Tatum's injury as an excuse, as a cover for what they wanted to do all along. I honestly don't think that's true. I think they would be playing it much more towards the middle if Jason Tatum if they got, knocked out in the round that they did against the Knicks, but Jason Tatum was totally fine and healthy. I think it wouldn't be this aggressive, but I think this just makes it that much more clear of a landscape for you to turn it and go, next year is like, what's the best that it's going to be? You get through one round of the playoffs? I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe they're really spunky.
I get it more. I get it resetting under the second apron more with Tatum out, but I do think it provided ownership. I don't think fans are up in arms. And I think they would be up in arms if Tatum were healthy. So I do think it made it easier for them to do it. By the way, I meant to bring this up earlier. You mentioned this to me off the air, Mego. Darren Dreger has another team in on Brad Marchand. So we know Florida's in the mix. He could re-sign there. He'd probably have to take less to go back there. We mentioned Boston and Toronto. Dreger adds the Utah Mammoth. What do you think about that nickname?
I like it.
You're in?
Wait, can I ask something stupid?
Yeah, sure. Of course. It's the only kind of question I ask.
The mammoth is the big animal, right?
The big animal?
What is a mammoth?
The big elephant. Yeah, like elephant.
The woolly.
Yeah, woolly mammoth. Yes,
the
exactly.
woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you said big animal. I was like, well, what kind? What do you mean? Big tiger?
Well, the way that they keep saying it, because they're saying the mammoth, like is a pack of mammoths just called a mammoth?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question.
So that's what I don't understand, because it's not like you don't say the Detroit Lion.
Yeah, right.
It's not one lion. It's the lions.
Are you one mammoth or is it a bunch of?
That's why I was feeling self-conscious because I didn't want to have a situation where I thought sauerkraut was fish again. And so I'm saying, the mammoth is the big animal, but is it the pack of big animals?
That I don't know. I now understand. Not a stupid question at all. I now understand the question. The Utah Mammoth. However many mammoths there are in there. They have what appears to be an aggressive approach this offseason. Dreger says if Brad Marchand hits the open market, look for Utah, Boston, and Toronto to be among those with strong interest. So add the Mammoths to the list. 617-779-7937. We mentioned Anthony Simons. Is he going to be here? How are the Celtics going to be able to carve out space to bring back Al Horford and Luke Cornett? Do you want to move Simons to bring those guys back? Or are there other avenues for the Celtics to go through? We'll get to that next.